Well, hiya, BookTube. Bill Ruttenberg here with the Ruttenberg Library. Wanted to come to you today with my January wrap-up. So what all did I get finished in the month of January? And wanted to do this today because I got a little bit of time. My little one has been sick this is the second day in a row. Yesterday at about 4:30 in the morning, she woke up and puked all over her bed. So, as I had explained in earlier videos, my wife has, recently gotten a job. And so I took the day off of school to stay home with her. And, she was pretty miserable all day. Laid on the couch, watched cartoons, laid on the couch, and kind of just had this look about her. And that is not her look. She usually goes 150 mile an hour, and I can't keep up with her. And she usually talks loud. She plays games all over the place, plays with their toys. They all have different voices, all of that good stuff that hyper kids have. And yesterday it wasn't going. And so we laid on the couch and just kind of took it easy all day. And I mean, just to kind of prove my point, my youngest daughter never takes naps. She hasn't taken naps since, probably before the age of 1. Like I said, she is just hyper from the minute she gets up till 3 hours after she goes to bed. And she just goes 90 mile an hour. And so yesterday I told her, we're going to lay down for a nap. She goes, do I have to go upstairs? Can I stay down here on the couch? I said, well, that's fine, but you got to take a nap. You're not going to get up to play. It's rest time and you don't feel good. And so we're not going to ruin that. And lo and behold, she slept for 2 hours, and she never sleeps during a nap. So she was not feeling good. And then, just last night, she showed signs of perking up a little bit, but she'd go for about 2 minutes where she was showing a little bit of her hyper self. And then she'd go sit on the couch for another 15, 20 minutes of going, ugh. And so, and then my wife, did temperature stuff, and she was still burning up. And so anyway, long story short, I'm here at home with her again. She's downstairs watching cartoons, seems to be doing a lot better. We'll be at school tomorrow. And but we wanted to just make sure of it. And aside from that, you're not supposed to be at school if you've been running a temperature. You're not supposed to go back to school for 24 hours. So just kind of following the rules that the school has in place and trying to do right by my child. So I've had the last 2 days off, kind of off. I'm going to have to do a lot of grading and stuff when I get back to school, clean up, the mess from when I've been gone. Not that it's a mess. We got a good sub who's filling in for me, but as a teacher, you don't like, or at least I don't like missing school. I think it's almost more work missing school than it is being at school. And I just enjoy being with the kids. But anyway, I'm rambling. Let's get back to the whole point of this video. I wanted to share with you what I read. And just as a recap of last year's January, just to kind of compare, I am feeling pretty good about my reading right now. Now, I did not pay attention to the exact books I read in January, so maybe they were big, thick ones, and this isn't a good comparison. But I only finished 4 books last year in the month of January, and this year I finished off 12 books. I thought that was pretty darn good. It ended up being a spread of 7 fiction and 5 nonfiction, and I've got a good chunk of those books here. I'll flash them on the screen, and then the books that I do not have with me, I'll try to put a little picture up in the window of what that book looked like. So anyway, BookTube, just the stats. Like I said, 7 fiction books that totaled out at 1,323 pages. It was an average of about 189 pages a book. So they were smaller books. And then I read 5 nonfiction for a total of 1,295 pages, and it averaged out to about 259 books. I do know that the largest book I read was 512 pages. Most of these were, just a couple hundred pages long. They weren't real big books. But I am in the middle. February should be different. I should have some bigger books coming in February that I'm in the middle of, and I'll share that with you in a video. But anyway, the month totaled out at 12 books, 2,618 pages at an average of 218 pages per book. So I'll have to look at last year's 4 books that I read. Maybe, you know, page-wise, maybe it's the equivalent. Maybe they were big books that I finished. I can't remember. I have to go back and look. But anyway, let me share with you what I did finish. I read my very first Agatha Christie Hercule Poirot book. I had never read. I've been trying to read through Miss Marple. I've been following Peg and Martine over at the History Shelf, and they've been reading a Marple a month. And they just finished their video, actually. Go check out their video. But they just did their video yesterday over book 3, which was The Moving Finger. And so they are about ready to start book 4 this month. And I'm going to be reading that with them. And it is entitled A Murder is Announced. But long story short, I had not read any Hercule Poirot books. And so I took the very first one. I bought this at Barnes & Noble. And absolutely love the cover. Wonderful cover. All the covers from, who is this from? Vintage. I just really like them. They do a nice job with the styles and the artwork on there. So anyway, Hercule Poirot, the mysterious affair at Styles, and this is all about a poisoning that happens and trying to figure out who poisoned who. And it was a really good book. I really like the style, and I even hesitate to say, because I know there's a ton of Marple fans out there, and I like Marple, but I actually like the style of the Hercule Poirot books better than I do the Marples, I think. At least right at the moment. Maybe the next one will change my mind on that. But I just started yesterday, since I had, you know, I've been at home, had a little bit more time. I read the first 40 pages of the next Hercule Poirot, which is, I'm going blank on the name, Murder on the Links. And I read the first 40 pages of that, and I hope to read another. I hope to get to about page 100 today, if I can. And I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving the style of these books. And of course, it's the famous detective Hercule Poirot, who has now went into business for himself as a detective, and he solves murders, and he's kind of quirky, and gives a. I wish I had the other book up here. I'd read the description to you. Maybe I'll do it in the next video. There was a wonderful description of his character, and I just kind of chuckled because it just gave me a good visual. So anyway, read that. That was really good. That was the first book that I finished. It took me from January 1st to January 5th to get that done. Then the next book that I finished, this is part of our Historathon 2023. And this was the first Historathon 2023 for this first quarter that I read. And if you don't know anything about the read-along, it's being put together by Vin over at Revenant Reads. Wonderful, wonderful initiative to read more nonfiction history. I couldn't agree more. It is something that gets overlooked on BookTube, I feel. But it is so, so good when you get a good writer. It's just like fiction. I mean, when you get a good writer, it's a good story. And nonfiction is the same way. And anyway, we split the year up into 4 segments. And in the first quarter, January through March, we're reading prehistory through 500 AD. And so I went and picked a few books off my shelf that I had collected over the last couple years that I just hadn't gotten to. And I thought this would be a good time to start reading them. And so I read The Babylonians, an introduction by Gwendolyn Leake. And I enjoyed that. What was it, 5 chapters, I think, long? And yeah, 5 chapters. So the first chapter was setting the scene, so just kind of giving you an overview of it. Second chapter was history, and I do hate to say that I struggled the most in the history chapter because there were so many names and so many civilizations and groups of people that were being thrown at me that, I'll be honest, I'm not well read in prehistory to 500. That is not my cup of tea. And so it was just a ton of new names and dates. And I struggled with chapter 2, but once I got into chapters 3, 4, and 5, so chapter 3 was society and economy, chapter 4 was religion, and chapter 5 was material culture, which I really enjoyed that one. Those chapters were absolutely awesome. I did like how this book had some, it had some pictures to go along with it, a couple of them, and it was a slim volume. It's only 182 pages long, and that includes the index and the notes at the end. So pretty slim volume, but a good introduction to the Babylonians. Gave you some ideas of maybe some jump off points, and that history chapter that it had gave some, maybe some good names to go look up for biographies on those people, or just histories of all those other civilizations that were around at the same time. So that was my first book for Historathon 2023. My next book that I read was part of my my challenge to myself. I have a list of authors that I am trying to read their collected works, and they are some of my favorite authors, and one of those that I've been working on over the last couple of years, and just this last year I kind of made it, this is my challenge, but in my head I'd had this challenge going for, well, probably all 3 years. I've been 4 years. All 3 years I've been on BookTube, and probably the year before that, I have wanted to read the collected works of Stephen Ambrose. And so what I did was, with Christmas money a couple years ago, I went and bought his book on Henry Halleck, and I finished that last year. And then this month, let's see, I finished this was January 3rd through January 12th. I read Upton in the Army. And again, slim little volume, just a slim biography, but when I looked it up, a lot of people say this is the best biography on Upton. I don't know that there's too many out there, and he did a high-quality job. And I was not super familiar with Upton, and so I learned quite a bit in this book. It talked about how he changed a lot of the tactics of the military. He did a lot of traveling to foreign countries to learn from their militaries and to take his ideas to those militaries. And he, of course, fought in the Civil War, as you can see in his photo there. He was a Union guy, and pretty much everybody really, really respected him. He was a very well-respected man. And so highly recommend that book. That was really good, especially in just some of the ideas that he brought in just the tactics of offensive warfare and how you attack an entrenched enemy and stuff like that. Don't attack them in a big long line. You gotta go narrow and punch a hole through the opposing defense, and just some tactics that were a little bit no-brainers when you think about it, but they weren't doing it. And so that brought a lot of success to some of the military at that time period, and people like Ulysses Grant and Henry Halleck and these guys, they all recognized his genius. He didn't always get along with everybody, but they recognized his genius. So that was the third book. The fourth book, and I actually did this one on audio because I was pretty positive I had read this a long, long time ago, and then the more I got to listening to it, I'm not sure that I got all the way through the book. It would have been when I was really teenager, maybe early 20s, but I listened to it on audio, and then I went to the bookstore and found it, and I love the cover, and I wanted to show you the cover. So this was All Quiet on the Western Front by Eric Maria Remarque, and this is a fabulous book. If you have never read this, you need to read it, and I would highly recommend listening to it on audio. And I wish I could remember who did the voice. I'll have to look that up, but it was absolutely wonderful to listen to. Now the story is very depressing. I'm the first to admit it's a Debbie Downer, definitely, and it's not going to make you feel real good about warfare, obviously, because it's an anti-war book from the German perspective. But it is absolutely fabulous. It does such a good job of painting a picture of what serving in the German military on the front line in World War I, what that was like, and just the psychological side of things. It was a pretty heavy book. I mean, it's just really good. And of course, I've told you guys before on the channel that we watched the movie from the late 1970s in my classroom, in my 7th grade classroom, after we get done covering World War I. We do a pretty extensive unit and incorporate a whole lot of history stuff and skills and stuff into that unit. And so as kind of a follow-up to that, we go to the World War I Museum, and then we watch All Quiet on the Western Front. And it was just, it's good stuff. The book, highly, highly recommended. It is your classic war novel, probably one of the best anti-war novels ever written. And I haven't read a ton of them, but every review that I see always says that. So highly, highly recommend that. BookTube went through that. And that'll probably, I'll be honest, this might become maybe a November audio I listen to every year, or maybe I'll try to pick it up and read it, but definitely at least audio. I'm going to add that to my list of like yearly rereads because it's very, very well worth it. I'll probably do it in November just because we'll be doing our World War I unit at that time. All right, so the next book, and I'll have to put a picture of this one up here, but this was a book of poetry. I know, BookTube, I don't usually read poetry. Poetry's not my bag. But I wanted to support a fellow booktuber who published his works of poetry. None other than the great Sean D. Standfast. And it is his book, Dark Passages, Moments in Transition. And this is a 259-page book. And I used it as my SSR read at school. And I dipped in and out of it every day for, 20 minutes of reading and went through those poems. And it took me, let's see, January 10th to January 18th to get through that. So a little over a week. And like I said, I just did a little bit at a time. But you talk about a guy with some talent. I found some handful of poems. And again, I'm not a poetry guy. So for me to find any poems that I like, that's saying something. I found a handful of them. And it is a book I will probably, one of these days, pretty soon, I don't know exactly when, the next couple months, I'm going to try to pick that up and buy it, support my fellow booktuber, a really great booktube channel. Go check him out. Again, Sean D. Standfast, Dark Passages, Moments in Transition. So great book. Go find that. Now, the next one that I've got is a classic in literature, or a lot of people consider it a classic in literature. I found it in this, I bought it in this Penguin Classics Deluxe Edition, and it includes Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. And it's 150th anniversary. Look at that cover. Isn't that awesome? And it's kind of a wraparound cover, and there's Alice on the backside. Absolutely awesome. My wife said I need to either get rid of it or hide it because of these guys. She did not like those nice French flaps. You got the uneven paperwork there. I can't remember what those are called, but you got these guys on the cover. And so I got to be honest, I didn't like it. I don't hope that doesn't hurt anybody's feelings. Alice in Wonderland, I read it. I can say I read it. It's one of the dumbest books I've ever read. Did not like Lewis Carroll's work here. And I didn't like really Through the Looking Glass either. I don't know how these are child classics. And I don't even know what to say, and I hope I don't get torn apart too much on this BookTube. But, that's what these BookTube channels are all about, is giving our opinions of books. Doesn't mean we all have to agree. I just did not like this book. I will keep it, though, in case my daughter wants to read it, either one of my daughters, and just because I think the cover is super cool. And, yeah, so read that one. I read Alice in Wonderland. That one kind of got spread out over 3 weeks' time because it got stuck on my nightstand, and I went to bed and was tired several nights. It should have took me about a week if I read a chapter or two each night. And they're about anywhere from 10 to 12-page chapters usually, maybe 8 to 12-page chapters. And so it's very doable to read it right before bed, but I just had a lot of times there I was tired. But let's see, that took me December 23rd to January 18th. It shouldn't have taken me that long. You can easily read this in a day or two, easy. And then I also read Through the Looking Glass from January 18th to January 25th. So about a week. And that's about what it should have taken me if I'm reading a chapter every night or chapter or two every night. My next one that I finished was January 17th through January 19th, and this is a audio book that I got for when I was doing dishes, because I like to do audio while I'm doing dishes so it's not wasted time. But I checked out The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Absolutely loved it. Washington Irving's descriptions of colonial New England and just the oh, I don't know, he sets a gloomy stage, and his descriptions of Ichabod Crane, they quite seriously made me laugh out loud. My wife came downstairs to get ready for work and asked me what the heck I was laughing at, and I had to tell her. The way he describes him is absolutely great. That is going to be a probably every year October either audio or read it. I got to find the book. I saw it last time I was at the bookstore at Barnes & Noble, and I didn't buy it. I should have bought it. But anyway, I'm going to buy that one of these in the next couple of months. I want to add that to my collection. It's going to be an every October read, I think. Either that or audio, one of the two. Thoroughly enjoyed the audio book. And then the next one, and I'll put a picture of this up in the deal. This was the 500-page book. This was Lost Cities and Ancient Tombs. And this was a National Geographic book. It took me January 3rd to January 23rd. And I had checked it out from the library. That's why I don't have a copy to show you. But like I said, I'll put a picture up. This was absolutely wonderful. I loved this book. It was heavily illustrated. I think I showed you this in a couple of different videos. So if you go back in my videos, you can find the pictures of the book, and I showed you some of the photography in it. But it is, National Geographic quality. It is absolutely fantastic read. It gave me so many jump-off spots of stuff to explore. Things like Easter Island, Stonehenge, the pyramids. I mean, you name it, it was in there. It was the 100 best archaeological finds over the last, 150 years or something like that. And it was absolutely awesome. And it gave anywhere from a 3 to 5 page article or description of that find, and highly recommend that book. It is a good one for amateur people like me who are not well read in those areas. I just thoroughly enjoyed it, and like I said, the chapters are short enough. If you just got a couple of minutes, or you want to put it on your nightstand and read 1 or 2 chapters before bed, I mean, it's short enough you can do that. And like I said, highly entertaining as far as history goes. All right, so the next one that I read. And by the way, I did count this as 2 books. I don't know how everybody else does this. When you get a book that has 1 or 2 or 3 different titles in it, because I got one of Michael Crichton that's got 3 different books in it downstairs. Do you count it as 1 book, or do you count it as 2 or 3 books, however many are in there? Tell me what you think down in the comments section. I'm curious to know how everybody else does that. I did, for my book count it as 2 books, because it is 2 separate books all combined into one. But I'd be curious to know how you guys do that. Next one, I went to the bookstore, the used bookstore, Books Revisited, and I love this publisher, this hard case crime publisher, and it's got this nice yellow border that goes around it. And this publisher, what they do is they take old, pulp fiction, crime fiction novels, and they've reprinted them. And then they've also got new ones that get added in. And I showed you in an earlier video a Stephen King one that I read. And then I found this one and another one that I got downstairs. But this one's by Lawrence Block. And if you'll notice, it is the very first, it's the very first one in the series. 001 there. So I thought that was pretty cool. And the other one I got downstairs is also by Lawrence Block. But this was, I love these type of books. Are they high quality? Absolutely not. The stories are, they're pulp. I mean, they are what they are, but they are highly entertaining. And that's why I pick them up, because if I, every once in a while I just need a read that is highly entertaining, that'll read fast, won't take me very long to get through it. And so that's what this was. And this is about a guy who is, this guy right here in the car, he is basically a professional at cheating people and living off of people and then taking off. And he lives anonymously under different names. And he meets this girl on the beach when he's in the middle of, well, first of all, he goes to a hotel, and when he's checking in, he sees this guy right here. His baggage is sitting there, and he just takes it and walks off and goes to his room that he just ordered, and it's just got initials on there. And when he opens it up, he finds heroin in there, and so he's like, oh, what do I do with this? And so then he's out on the beach and just kind of living it up, and he has this really good looking woman come down, and he gets to talking to her and, you know, flirting around with her. And she says she's going to leave her husband and all of this kind of stuff. Well, lo and behold, her husband happens to be the guy who owns the heroin. And he didn't know that until, you know, later in the story as it develops. And the plan is, you kill my husband, I'll sell off his stuff, and then we'll both move to Miami, to Florida, and we'll get married. And so he kills him, moves to Florida, waits for her, and waits for her, and waits for her, and she never shows up. And so anyway, he goes like a detective trying to track her down, and ends up tracking her down in Nevada. And I don't want to spoil the story, but very interesting ending to it. He does end up finding her. So she wasn't as faithful as she had said she was going to be. Of course, she's having him kill her husband. So is she faithful to begin with? Anyway, it was just a fun crime novel. Enjoyed that. The next one that I read, number 11 on my list, was by James McPherson, one of my favorite Civil War authors, as I've bragged on him time and time again on this channel. This was his Antietam, the battle that changed the course of the Civil War. And this was a pretty good read. It's from the Crossroads of Freedom series that was put together, talking about, you know, just individual events in history that, you know, changed the face of all of history. Now, with this book, though, it was good, but it was a disappointment at the same time. Because, you know, by the title, Antietam, the battle that changed the course of Civil War, you would think that the majority of this book would be all about the Battle of Antietam. And I am telling you, the story is only, let's see, 156 pages long. It took, I think, 95 pages before it even talked about the Battle of Antietam. And it only talked about the Battle of Antietam for 30 pages. And then it did the legacy, the after effects, and got away from the battle again. So that in itself was a big disappointment, because I was expecting a history of Antietam, a concise history, and did not get that at all. But at the same time, it is an easy read, good read. McPherson and his narrative style is always easy to understand. I always enjoy reading his stuff, so I'm glad I read it. But I'm going to have to go find another book on my shelf about the Battle of Antietam. That was kind of a disappointment. And then the last book that I just finished, I finished it, and it was an audio. I listened from January 28th to January 31st, so I finished this one up right before the month was over. And this is a brand new book that's out. It's on the shelves at, I saw it at Target is where I saw it. And I would highly recommend it to everybody out there. This man had such a positive story on such a sad set of events. And it was called, and I'll put a picture up here, it was called The Happiest Man on Earth, The Beautiful Life of an Auschwitz Survivor. And it's by Eddie Jaku. And it's only 208 pages. It's like 3.5 hours on audio. And it is about a man he was a Jewish man, lived through the Holocaust, and he was at, he was at Auschwitz, he was at several different camps in different countries. So he was in Poland, Germany, I think the Netherlands, Belgium, France. He was all over the place. He'd get captured, he'd escape, get captured, he'd escape. His dad made sure he was an educated man, and he was educated in, I think it was like engineering and tools and stuff. And that education saved his life. And that is what allowed him to live, because every time he was captured by the Germans, because he was captured by several different groups of people, but when he got in the hands of the Germans, they always kept him alive because he was useful to them and useful to the war effort. But anyway, he is definitely what we'd call a survival story from the Holocaust. Absolutely wonderful story. His message of hope, that everyone has to have hope, that's what gets you through, was so incredibly powerful. And I can't speak enough of this book. Just go check it out. Go check it out. It was absolutely wonderful. He seems like an old man I'd like to sit down and have a cup of coffee with. And, I mean, he was over 100 years old when he was writing this book. And you got to admire that. He's got a heck of a story, and people need to hear it. So anyway, BookTube, that is what I got read in January 2023. That is my January wrap-up. It was a pretty productive month as far as book numbers go, totals. Again, the books weren't real big. Most of them were a couple hundred pages, but still got a lot of reading done. I mean, I thought my page count was pretty high, and yeah, it was pretty productive. Way higher than, you know, last January. So I guess my big question is, what are you reading? That's what I'm reading. What are you reading? What did you get read, rather? I'm going to come back with a couple more videos today, or that's my plan anyway, and I want to give you my February TBR, what it is that I want to get read in the month of February. So, BookTube, I appreciate you spending, half an hour watching. Hopefully you made it this far, and I hope everyone's having a great day. I'm going to go down and check on my daughter, make sure she's still doing okay. So, until next time, thank you for watching, and happy reading.